Mid-late 1970s Cambodia. Families are torn apart. Parents and their children are separated and sent to different labor camps where prisoners were subjected to forced labor, abuse, and starvation. This was the reality for hundreds of thousands of people during the Cambodian Genocide led by Pol Pot. The Khmer Rouge regime was responsible for the death of almost 2 million people. From forced labor to mass executions, prepare to be astounded by the brutality of this evil dictator and the atrocities committed during his reign. To understand the horrors of Pol Pot's reign, we must first set the stage. In the aftermath of the Cambodian Civil War in the mid-1970s, Cambodia was plunged into a nightmare under the leadership of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge. This organization overthrew the Cambodian government in 1975 and, under their rule, the country was renamed Democratic Kampuchea. This set the stage for one of history's darkest chapters. From 1975 to 1979, the Cambodian Genocide was driven by the radical ideology that sought to create a purely agrarian and classless society based on Chinese communist principles. To achieve this vision, the Khmer Rouge forcibly evacuated urban areas, implemented collective farming, and brutally suppressed any perceived opposition. They believed that urbanization, intellectualism, and capitalism were corrupting influences that needed to be eliminated. Forced labor was a cornerstone of the Khmer Rouge regime. Urban areas were forcibly evacuated and people were relocated to rural labor camps where they were subjected to grueling physical labor under deplorable conditions. The Khmer Rouge aimed to eliminate private property, dismantling families and communities, and forcing people to work on collective farms. This policy not only resulted in widespread malnutrition and famine, but also subjected individuals to constant surveillance, harsh discipline, and extreme coercion. It was a cornerstone of the regime's attempt to create an entirely agrarian society, devoid of urban influence, and it contributed significantly to the suffering and death toll of the Cambodian Genocide. Mass executions represent one of the most harrowing and chilling aspects of this dark period in history. Under Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge regime, anyone perceived as a threat to the regime, which often included intellectuals, professionals, urban dwellers, and those with any real or perceived ties to foreign countries, were systematically hunted down, tortured, and executed. These executions took place in a range of settings, from remote killing fields to grim prisons, where the methods used were horrific and inhumane. They range from beatings and bludgeoning to shootings and grisly practices like smashing the skulls of infants against trees. The infamous killing fields of Cambodia served as mass graves for countless victims, and the scale of these atrocities, where an estimated 1.7 million people lost their lives, continues to haunt the collective memory of Cambodia and the world. Under the Khmer Rouge regime, the leadership sought to erase all traces of the past and eliminate any cultural or intellectual influences they deemed corrupting. This effort involved the deliberate destruction of Cambodia's cultural heritage, including the desecration of temples, historical sites, and religious artifacts. Buddhism, a fundamental aspect of Cambodian culture, was harshly suppressed, with monks and religious practitioners persecuted, temples desecrated, and religious practices banned. Intellectuals, educators, and anyone associated with intellectual pursuits were systematically hunted down and executed, as the Khmer Rouge deemed education and knowledge as incompatible with their ideology. The regime enforced a strict dress code, eradicated individual names, and prohibited traditional customs and practices in an attempt to create a homogenized, classless society. Furthermore, book burnings and the destruction of libraries were carried out on a massive scale, erasing centuries of Cambodian history and culture. The cultural purge and suppression were not only about erasing the past, but also about eradicating any potential sources of opposition and influence that could challenge the Khmer Rouge's control. This aimed to create a tabula rasa, a blank slate on which the Khmer Rouge could inscribe their vision of a new society. Torture and brutality were pervasive and haunting features of the Cambodian Genocide. Interrogation centers, notably Tuol Sleng S21, were established to extract confessions, often through barbaric methods including beatings, electric shocks, waterboarding, and psychological torment. These practices aim to force confessions or implicate others in supposed anti-Khmer Rouge activities, while simultaneously breaking the spirit of individuals, making them compliant with the regime's demands. Torture extended beyond interrogation centers to labor camps and prisons, where victims could be subjected to cruelty for even minor infractions. Prisoners were often executed with pickaxes to save bullets, and executioners smashed children against trees. Public executions in squares and killing fields further terrorized the population. The widespread and systematic use of torture and brutality not only left deep physical and psychological scars on survivors, but also served as a grim testament to the regime's relentless pursuit of control and the horror of the Cambodian genocide. The forced collectivization of agriculture, along with the evacuation of urban areas, disrupted traditional food production and distribution channels. People were forcibly relocated to labor camps and forced to engage in grueling agricultural labor with inadequate resources and tools. Starvation became widespread as meager food rations were often insufficient, leading to extreme malnutrition, physical weakness, and, in many cases, death. Moreover, the conditions in labor camps and prisons were squalid, with overcrowding and a lack of access to clean water and proper sanitation. This created a breeding ground for diseases, including malaria, dysentery, and other infections, which spread rapidly among the malnourished and weakened detainees. Despite the availability of medical knowledge and resources, the Khmer Rouge intentionally neglected the health care of their prisoners, leading to high mortality rates due to preventable illnesses. Thus, starvation and disease were not only unintended consequences, but also, in many cases, deliberate tools of control, as the regime sought to weaken and subjugate the population. The suffering and loss of life caused by these twin horrors left an indelible scar on the Cambodian people and serve as a tragic reminder of the human toll of the Cambodian genocide. In December 1978, Vietnam carried out a military invasion of Cambodia led by the Cambodians themselves who had taken refuge in that country. A month later, Vietnam takes Phnom Penh, capital of Cambodia, while Pol Pot and his men flee to the jungles of the northwest. Vietnam founded the Cambodian People's Republic, marking the end of the Cambodian Genocide and the Khmer Rouge's reign of terror. The Cambodian nation and its people, however, were left with profound trauma. Families were torn apart, cultural institutions were destroyed, and the educated class was decimated. As much as 2 million people lost their lives. This left Cambodia in a state of deep distress, and its effects continued to be felt to this day. In the wake of such a tragedy, Cambodia embarked on a long and challenging journey towards healing and reconciliation. This process involved the search for justice, accountability, and understanding. Efforts to hold the perpetrators accountable have been made, notably through the establishment of the Khmer Rouge Tribunal. This international court aimed to bring some of the key figures to justice, offering a measure of closure to survivors and their families. In closing, the Cambodian genocide is a somber chapter in human history that reminds us of the depths of cruelty that humans are capable of inflicting upon one another. It also underscores the resilience, strength, and capacity for healing within the human spirit. As we reflect on this painful period, let us commit to remembering the victims, supporting the survivors, and working towards a world where such atrocities never happen again. In such a tumultuous world, let's strive together for a brighter, more compassionate future.